We're going to switch gears for this next example, and we're going to actually create a scatter plot based on some data. So the data that I'm given here is I have the living area in square feet for 12 different recently sold homes, and then the price that they sold at. And so it says to let X be the living area. So this first column is going to be my X values, and then Y is going to be the second column, the selling price. And then this asks us to write the equation of the linear function that models the selling price as a function of the amount of square feet in the home. So this can be very overwhelming when you see this on a homework or a test, that you're given this set of data and asks you to find this equation. But whenever that happens, there's really no algebraic work that you need to do. The calculator will do this for us. So it's just a matter of putting things into the calculator. So the first thing is, of course, we need to put our data into the calculator. So the way that we do that is we're going to go to stat, and then I want to enter or basically edit my data. So I'm going to choose the very first option. So I'll just hit enter in order to edit my data. Now, if you have data that's in here already, you're going to need to clear that out before you can proceed here, but you should be seeing several lists, list 1, 2, 3, and so on. And so I'm going to go through how to delete out or how to clear out your lists. So you're going to need to know this even if they're not full right now, because eventually you're going to have to clear out the data you put in to put in more data. So if you have any numbers in any of your lists, so let's say I've got some numbers here in both L1 and L2, right? So what you would do is you need to arrow up until the whole list is highlighted. And then you want to be really careful that you do not hit delete, because then you'll have no more L2 and it'll just go straight from L1 to L3. But you do want to hit the clear button, right? So don't hit delete, but hit clear and then hit enter. And that will clear the whole list. And then I'm going to go up and over and do the same thing with L1. While that whole list is highlighted, I'm going to hit not delete, but I'm going to hit clear and then enter. And now I'm ready to put my data in. So we're going to put our X values into L1. So that's going to be our living areas are going to go in L1, and then our Y values or our selling prices are going to go into L2. So I'm just going to start putting in my data into these lists. Okay, so once we've got our data entered into L1 and L2, it is absolutely worth taking an extra minute and just double checking that everything is entered correctly, because one mistake here, one tiny mistake, will throw everything off and you'll have an incorrect answer. So it's worth it to just double check those values. All right, so before I get the calculator to write a linear equation that models this, I kind of want to see what this data looks like. So I'm actually going to tell my calculator to graph the scatter plot of this. In order to do that, I need to turn that feature on. So that is the stat plot feature. And so that's above my y equals button. So I'm going to hit second, and then this button to get into stat plot. And most likely right now, all of your plots are off, and we just want to turn one of these on. I'm just going to choose plot 1. So while 1 is highlighted, I'm going to hit enter. And then you'll notice right now that there's a solid box on off, and then my cursor is currently blinking on. So what I'm going to do is while it's blinking on, I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to toggle it from the off position to the on position. And then we just want to do a quick check and make sure that all of our other settings look good. So I want to make sure that the first option, which is the scatter plot, is selected. We did put our X values in L1 and our Y values in L2, so we want to make sure that that doesn't say anything different. And then you can change the other features in terms of the color or the marker. The only thing I would suggest is I would not use that last one because it's so tiny it's almost impossible to see. But this looks good, so we're good to go. Once we've turned that on, then basically we have a scatter plot. So I can hit graph, but the problem is, well, there's a couple things going on here. One is I have a previous problem in here. So right now I'm not seeing my scatter plot, I'm seeing this previous problem. So I need to clear that out. So I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to just hit clear to get rid of whatever the last equation was that I put in there. And so now if I hit graph, you would think that would work, but The graph is no longer there, which is good, but I'm actually still zoomed to the section of the graph where I'm still on the window that I used for the last problem, and I need to change my window to something that's relevant for this problem. So right now, I can see that my X values go from -10 to 10. That doesn't make sense for this data. So my X values were the square footage of a home. It wouldn't make sense to have a negative value there because you can't have a negative number of square feet. So it might make sense to start at 0. Or it might make even more sense to even start at something bigger than that. So if I look at this data in the square footage, the smallest number I have is 1,360. So I don't need to go any smaller than that really. So maybe a little bit smaller. We could do 1,300 or 1,350, just something a little bit smaller than the smallest one in there. And then my largest X value here, it looks like it's 2,230. So, there's no one right answer. You can maybe do like 2,250 or 2,500, whatever makes sense to you there. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Y value. So like my smallest Y value here looks like it's around 134,000. So I might start at like 130,000 or something, and go to the largest one is around, so a little bit more than 235,000. So you can just set this manually. However, there is a shortcut, and I'm going to use the shortcut. So anytime you are using your calculator to do a scatter plot, you can go to Zoom, and then if you scroll until you get to Zoom Stat will automatically zoom to wherever your points are for your scatter plot. So you should be getting this graph. And yours should look exactly the same as that. So if you're not getting that, then you need to go back through the steps again and see if there's something you missed. If you're getting this, but maybe like 1 or 2 of your points are not in exactly the same spot as this, then go back to edit your data and check and make sure that your data is entered correctly. So it should look exactly the same as this. So this problem is asking us to write an equation of a line. So they're basically saying, can we fit a line to this data? And I am seeing a general like upward trend from left to right here. So it would make sense. I could, not that I would have a line that would go through every point, but I could find a line that fits the general trend I'm seeing. So I'm going to tell the calculator to calculate that line for me. So I'm going to go to Stat. And then this time, I don't want to edit my data. I actually want to get the calculator to calculate something for me. So I'm going to arrow over to Calc. And then there are actually several options here, and we're going to use a lot of these this semester. But for right now, this is asking for a linear function or a line that fits our data. So we're doing linear regression. There are 2 options for linear regression. I think most instructors tend to use option 8. But guys, they're really the same thing. It's just a matter of, do they write the X term first and then the intercept, or do they write the intercept and then the X term? So I'm going to choose option 8, but technically option 4 is going to look a little different, but it's really the same answer. So I'm going to choose that regression option. And if your screen doesn't look like this, you probably have an older model calculator. You can basically just hit enter all the way through. Just keep hitting enter until it gives you an answer. So if your screen looks like this, though, you just want to double check that, yes, we're saying that our X values are in L1 and our Y values are in L2. And same thing here, you can technically just keep hitting enter until it gives you an answer. However, I not only want it to calculate my regression equation, I also want it to graph it. So I'm going to tell it that I want it to not just calculate it, but I want it to also store it, right? So I want to tell it to store my equation in y equals so that it actually gets graphed. So what I'm going to do is I just arrowed down to this line that has the store on it. And then on this line, I'm going to choose vars, which stands for variables. And then I'm going to arrow over to yvars, which stands for y variables. And I'm going to choose the first option, which is functions. So I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm just going to put it in y1. So again, I'm going to hit enter while y1 is selected. And that's just telling it to not only calculate the equation of the line, but to also store it in y equals so that it will graph it. And then I'm just going to hit enter until it gives me an answer. If yours gives you R and R squared, you won't need those, but if you have more information than what this shows, that's perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt anything. But you should be getting these exact same numbers. So this is my linear equation. So this is y equals a plus bx, but they're telling me that a is negative 3,086 points. I'm just going to round to 2 decimals, so this would be 37. So y equals a plus bx, so that was a, and then plus b is 98 point, if I'm rounding to 2 decimals, it's going to be 0.15, and then I put my x in there. So it's just a plus bx, except I'm putting in what they're telling me a and b are. So if you're not getting the exact same numbers, if you're really, really close, again, go back and check your data that it was entered correctly. But if you're getting something really far off, then we maybe need to go back and repeat the steps or ask for help. So this is the equation of the line that it's giving me. And since I already told it to store it in y equals, I can just hit graph right now. And it puts that line through my data. So in this case, it's asking, does the line fit the data well? Yeah, this is fitting it reasonably well. So, I don't expect it to fit every point perfectly. It's not going to go through every point. That's normal, but it fits the general trend that we're seeing. And it even goes through some of the points and is pretty close to the other points. So this is a pretty good fit.